Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for attending today. This is going to be a quick webinar that looks at phrase and proximity searching and gives you techniques that you can use to tell which is the better strategy for searching for the particular terms that you're trying to find. So I will dive in. Hopefully, yes, there we go. So what we'll look at are the three different strategies that you can broadly employ for fine-tuning your search. And then we'll look particularly at phrase searching. Then we'll look at proximity searching on the Web of Science platform. We'll look at the order of operations and the relational spectrum between the different strategies that you can employ. And throughout, we'll look at different methods you can use to test which is the best thing to use when. So we'll jump in here. So there's basically three ways to fine-tune your search. And the title of this webinar talked about two of them. One is phrase searching and one is using proximity operators. And the other one is using an and search. So that's a slightly broader way to fine-tune your search, but it should definitely be in your toolkit when you're thinking that way. So if we look at definitions, phrase searching means quite specifically that two or more words need to appear in your results in exactly the order that you typed them, and also with no intervening words between them. So that is the tightest kind of search that you can do. A proximity search, which falls kind of midway, is where two words appear with a maximum words that is a number that you set between each other. So, and with proximity searching, either word can appear first. So you don't have control over that. And then finally, with the Boolean and operator, you have two words or more if you use more than one and that need to appear somewhere in the record. And they don't have any given relationship to each other. So they can be any distance from each other, except that you might specify that they need to be in the same field. So they might both need to be in the title field or both need to be in the abstract field or something like that. So that's a little bit tighter than if they're just anywhere, but it's much, much, much looser than a phrase search. So the thing about phrase searching is I think that we're all pretty familiar with it, and it's definitely a powerful tool. But the point that I want to make about phrase searching is that it can be quite easy to make a phrase out of two words that don't really need to belong together as a phrase. So your goal when you're doing phrase searching is to find and identify what I would call a true phrase. So where your words really do need to be next to each other without any words in between them to capture what it is that the concept is that is created by those two or more words. So there's ways that you can test this. And it's actually one of the most common mistakes that I see students making, where they'll use this powerful tool of a phrase for words that shouldn't really be a phrase. And so what that means is that they then lose lots of relevant results because they don't see them by using a phrase for something that's not truly a phrase. So the way that we can test this is by doing two different searches and combining them. So you can take what you think your phrase is, but type it out as an and search, so Turkish and delight, and then remove it as an actual phrase, so say not Turkish delight as a phrase, and then you can check and see what your results are. So if I do this, apologies, this is being quite unresponsive. There we go. So if I copy this search and I go into FSTA So here I was at the Web of Science. I'm going to actually go into FSTA to do my search. And you see here I have the search run as Turkish and delight somewhere in the record, anywhere in the record. And I'm saying I want to see all the results that have Turkish and delight somewhere in them, unless they actually have the phrase Turkish delight in them. So what I'm doing by doing the search is saying I want to see the leftovers. So I want to see what happens when I take out my phrase and make a judgment whether those results where my phrase isn't appearing are ones that I want to see or not. So I'll do the search. And I get 6 results. And what I think it is that I'm seeing people make puns on the phrase. So Turkish fail to delight. Here we have it as plural. So this is something to make a note of in Web of Science. When you have your words inside quotation marks, then it doesn't do any automatic searching for both the singular and plural versions of the phrase of a word. It will only search for exactly what you've typed. So I might decide, okay, in this case, if I'm losing any results that are actually about Turkish delight, it's very few and I don't mind. So I might decide, yeah, I think that sticking with Turkish delight as a phrase is a good thing to do. Now, if I do instead look and check and see if meat quality is a good phrase by searching meat and quality, not meat quality as a phrase, then I'm going to do this one just in the title field because that makes it really easy for us to see the results without having to go into records. Then I can see right away that I'm getting things like meat cut quality. Here's the microbial quality of chicken breast meat. So I'm getting things that I think really are about the quality of meat quality, quality of fermented meat, quality of artisanal game meat. So sometimes it's a specific kind of meat, but it's about quality of meat. So that tells me that having it as a phrase, meat quality, isn't a good idea because I'm going to lose a lot of potentially very, very useful results for my search. And the reason I use this example is because it's a real example that I've seen in literature. So you'd think that that would be kind of obvious that meat quality shouldn't be a phrase, but it's a very common mistake where people put words together to try to refine their results, but you should try different strategies to refine your results rather than using an artificial phrase like that. A really easy way to check it in your head is just to flip it. Okay, so if you can say meat quality or quality of meat, and it means the same thing, then obviously it shouldn't be a phrase because it doesn't work. So what else can you do though? If we go and think about proximity searching, that's something that gives us tighter control than just an and, but isn't as constrained as using a phrase search. So the way that we run a proximity search on the Web of Science platform for FSTA is use the operator near /x. And x, you don't type x, you type a number there. So, and that number can be any number that you think is appropriate. So we could use it to type. We could search for biodegradable near 5 words package or packaging. I realize I truncated this wrong. I should have backed that up so it's after the G. I could also do raspberry near 7 juice. So that raspberry has to be within 7 words of juice. So if we look at this again, so do this search, raspberry near 7 juice. Oops, apologies. And I'll keep it in a title search just so that it's really easy for us to see our results again. Then we can see that if I change this actually to a different display, then we start to see that a lot of times we have raspberry and juice or juices right next to each other, but sometimes we start to get results where you have raspberry and then its Latin name, Rubus idaeus, and then juice or juices. And so if we looked through more of these results, we'd find that that happens in quite a few of them. So if we had done raspberry juice as a phrase, again, we would have lost all of these results where it had its Latin name inserted right in the middle, which happens with some scientific literature about food. So it's something to bear in mind that by giving yourself a little bit more leeway with your search, you'll still pick up the relevant things and you won't miss some of the what's potentially actually more scientific literature. So it's a really, really, really powerful tool for your searching. So now you can actually do sort of a phrase search using a proximity operator by using near/0. So by saying near/0, you're saying that nothing can go in between your two words. So shelf needs to be exactly against life, but the difference is that either shelf or life can be either singular or plural in the way it presents itself. So why would you do this? Because sometimes there are results that include shelf lives. So it's something that you might not think of as an option when you think of shelf life, but really shelf lives means the same thing as shelf life, usually in relation to more than one product. So this is a way that you can do a phrase search that's just a little bit looser. So it, again, can be a really useful tool. So what do you do if your phrase has more than 2 words? So if it's really truly a phrase, then you can just put the whole thing inside the quotation marks. So that works really well with something like branched chain amino acids, where those words are going to be together as that in that sequence, and they will be exactly those words. But if it's partly a phrase, but partly could be separated, then you can use a combination of the quotation mark, so a phrase, and then the proximity operator. So we could look for lactose-free milk, but give some leeway between the lactose-free and the milk. So again, we'll look at this one. keeping it in the title again so that we can see it really easily. And you can see right away we're getting things about lactose-free bovine milk, lactose-free pasteurized milk. If we went further, we'd find things like lactose-free raw milk, UHT milk, etc. So lactose-free various kinds of milks. So again, those might be quite useful to be seen in your results list, and you might have missed them if you've done that strictly as a phrase. So there's some things that you should know about the near operator. If you leave out a number, so if you were to just type near, then it gets interpreted as near 15. So that's the way it will be read. So you can do that if you want to, or you can make it a specific number. It also won't work to build a search string where you have search term and then near and then an and phrase. So this one, the lipids near 10, Atlantic and salmon, just would get you an error result, an error message if you tried to search that. So there are other ways that you can approach a search if you wanted to do a search like that. You can do, as we already saw, lipids near 10, and then the phrase Atlantic salmon. Or you could do the other kind of phrase search where you actually use the proximity operator and do lipids near 10 and then Atlantic near 0 salmon. So both of those would get you results. It's possible that the bottom one would get you a couple more results than the top one. So you'll notice that when you do the two proximity operators with the near 0, you will want to put the one where you're making a phrase with the near 0 inside brackets so that that is done first, and then it's combined near 10 with the lipids. Because this is because of the way the order of operations works. If you didn't have any brackets or parentheses, then the Web of Science search interface would work through it. First, it would do any near operations from left to right, and then it would do any not operations, then it would do any and operations, and then it would do any or operations. So you can always override this by using parentheses. So just to give you a sense of the difference that it makes, if we searched glucose near 7, BCAA, or branched chain amino acids, then we get 1,071 results. If we do it by putting BCAA or branched chain amino acids inside the parentheses, then we only get 21 results. But what would happen in that search is if we did the top one, we would have results that had the word glucose that was within 7 words of BCAA. And then we would also get all the results that have branched chain amino acids in it. Oops, sorry. And in this case, we'd have the results that have glucose and then near BCAA, or we'd have results that have glucose near branched chain amino acids. But in either case, we'd have glucose and one of the variations of BCAA in the results. So it would be what we were looking for, presumably. How big can you use? How far apart can you make your numbers? I don't know what the limit is, but I know that it will read it up to 1,000. So with this result, this is somewhere between 750 and 1,000 uh, words apart, this bag and grocery. So that's really far, but you get to a certain point where why bother using the proximity operator? Why not just use an and? Um, and you can, as I mentioned at the beginning, always, if you want to be a little bit more specific with an and, confine it to one field. So just the title field, or just the abstract field, or just the descriptors field. So the best way to decide which number you should use for proximity operator is do some experimentation. I often find that 5 or 7 is pretty good because it brings it pretty close together, but not so doesn't give it such leeway that the words might not actually have much of a relationship to each other. And generally speaking, if I'm using a proximity operator, I do want them to have that relationship. So as just a review, with your relational searches, you have the different options, and the broadest, proximity search, in the middle, and phrase search to be the very most specific. And you can always test them against each other by setting up a not search. So if you're not sure if you want to use a phrase or not, you can do the and search and then take away the phrase search to see what's left and see if what's left is useful. You can do the same thing with a proximity search. You can do an and search and do a take away, not the proximity search, and see what's left. You can also do different sized proximity searches. So you could do a proximity search that's 15 and then take away the ones that are 7 and see what you get in that window and whether or not they're actually useful, or do you want to tighten that search? So you can really use the not as your powerful tool, not for the final search, but for you gauging what is the best technique for you to use in the search that you're doing. So I would just reiterate that it's really fun to, it's really useful and fun to experiment with it. Sometimes you find that things that you absolutely thought would be a phrase shouldn't be a phrase, or they'll be split up by like raspberry and blueberry juices or something like that. So if you experiment with the proximity searching, it can open your eyes to the way that language works in the literature and to make sure that you're finding what you actually need to find. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. And if you don't already, I'd like to invite you to follow us on any of the social media channels that we use, that you use, so you see the information in front of you. And if you have any questions that come up later, don't hesitate at all to contact us, and we'll be really happy to help you.